everyone. Welcome to the Felicity, Optimist versus Cynic podcast with us, your hosts, Melissa and Fish. This is a Felicity rewatch podcast. We'll watch an episode each week and join you here to talk all about it. Just a quick reminder, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so we may mention some things that happen in future episodes of Felicity, but this is a really fun one anyway, so maybe just stick around for it. I am Melissa, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Fish. Fish, how are you doing today?
I'm great today. This was a fun one.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this one. I talked it up last time and I feel like it earned its praise. So we are talking about season 1, episode 10. This episode is called Finally. It originally aired December 15th, 1998. This was the episode right before about a 1-month break for the show, or in terms of when it aired. It was written by J.J. Abrams, directed by Michael Fields. And the summary is, though finals and Christmas break are fast approaching, Felicity spends most of her study time literally wrapped up in Noel and helping Ben prepare for a poetry test. Meanwhile, Sean tries to sell fruit to students in the library. You know, I guess if you're going to try to summarize this episode, that's as good as anything. I don't know. Fish, where do you want to start in this hodgepodge of a fun little episode?
Yeah, I think I just want to start by talking about how they actually shot it. It was all these fun little vignettes of 1 or 2 people, sometimes 3, coming together, coming apart, moving around. It was very fast and kind of frenetic, and sort of the music that went on in the background, compared to them putting the subtitles on when they're supposed to be in the silent area of the library. I just thought it was fun. They had all these just little moments that we could laugh at. So
yeah,
I kind of just want to go through some of them. I mean, do you have any favorites?
Well, so the whole thing is my favorite, really. I mean, so if you were to say, Melissa, what's your favorite episode of Felicity? There are 2 that come to mind. This is one of them. They're favorites for very different reasons. And maybe it'd confuse people that I like the 2 episodes that I like the most, because one's more of a Ben and one's more of a Noel, maybe. I don't know. But this is just a fun episode all the way through. There are so many quotable classic lines from this. And watching it more closely this time, I was really noticing the structure. So a lot of the things you just mentioned, I totally agree with. But I think one of the things that's interesting to me about this is that it actually really builds up kind of slowly at first. Everything feels like short vignettes and it feels like it's all happening quickly, but there is definitely a build. They are piling on for the whole episode. And then by the end of the episode, it gets very quiet and very subdued, but it has that sort of like ramp up and then ramp back down feeling. And it kind of parallels to me with reading a Dickens novel, which is interesting to me that Felicity and Noel were studying for his Great Expectations final. Because to me, when I read Dickens, it's like you spend a lot of time getting to know the characters in the start of the book and getting the whole setup. And then once you know it, you just start really plowing into some forward moving action in the plot. And that's what happened for me here. So we had a lot of that setup with, like you said, these 1 and 2 character or 2 or 3 character scenes. And then right about the time Noel takes the smart powder, you start getting the Swingtips music, the Santa Swing song, and it gets faster and faster as it goes. And you start getting the subtitles. And a lot of the things that are really iconic to me about this episode happen around that time. And as I was checking the time as it was going through, like sort of 2/3 of the way into the episode was when a lot of the stuff I really remembered started happening. But it just, for me, built as we got in there. So I did want to give that overall note. I know that's not the question you asked, but it's the question I wanted to answer. And here
Good
you
job.
are like, answer my question, Melissa. And I'm sitting here saying no. So you can ask it again. But I wanted to put that out there as like an overall structure thing because it's not something that I observed as much in previous watches of this particular episode.
Yeah, I definitely felt that. You're right. Around the time that Noel took the smart powder, which, I assumed was cocaine, and pretty much had that effect on him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it got crazy, but it's you're right. It started off very slow with Noel and Felicity just being awkward around each other and staring at each other and trying to define what they were to each other after, what is it? Is it 3 kisses now? Um, so I liked that scene where they were just sitting on Noel's bed staring at each other. I did notice he still has the flag in the
Mm-hmm.
background, and I've been keeping an eye out for that. And so they're looking at each other and saying, "What does this mean?" And the other one says, "I don't know." Uh, and so it's just the perfect timing for a phone call from your mother.
Mm-hmm.
And let's all just take a look at that phone. Landlines, fantastic. Um, and of course, something is going to happen with timing. And so I think timing ends up being something throughout this that things just don't work out quite right. But what do they pick? They pick the most ridiculous thing to happen, that Noel's uncle has hit a chicken truck because he likes to have sex with dead people. Um,
That's one interpretation. We just
for
got little
anyone
pieces
out
of that
there,
conversation.
yeah,
Uh,
for anyone out there who's ever mixed up necrophilia and narcolepsy, we feel you. We've all done it. It's okay.
we also don't know that he hit a chicken truck. What we first heard was Uncle Kenny. Uncle Kenny was chicken truck. Uncle Kenny
That's
was chicken truck. That doesn't make any sense, Mom. I assume he got hit by a chicken truck.
Oh, I assumed he hit a chicken truck since he was the one who was narcoleptic and therefore probably fell asleep and hit the chicken truck. But
Fair
then
enough.
again,
I mean,
either way, he's in a coma now.
yeah, it's not good. It's not a good time for Uncle Kenny. Uncle
No,
Kenny has some issues to work out.
I mean a few, especially if the necrophilia was true.
And the poor chickens, by the way.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine that happening? Like what a spectacle that would be on the road.
I can. There was a truck, like a full big truck that turned over that had a bunch of chickens, and was in the U.S. around here, and yeah, they were just everywhere. Lots of feathers, lots of birds running all over the place. So
A lot of clucking.
lots of stuff in this show is based in reality. Just saying.
Okay. That's not one of the things I thought was based in reality, but that's
Mm,
great. I
yep.
like it.
Yep.
Yeah, and something I like about that scene, because I think they tried a lot of new editing and different techniques and tools in this particular episode that for me worked really well, but they set the stage for it right away, because in that scene where Noel and Felicity are on his bed and they're talking and they're so awkward and feels like a very quiet moment in the room, it is being abruptly cut back and forth between those scenes and Felicity talking to Sally about how awkward it is and how they're trying to figure out what it is. So I think that that switching back and forth feeling is very much a vibe that you have in this episode really throughout. And so I like that they're kind of jarring you back and forth between action happening and people talking about the action that happened.
Yeah, I do like the cutting back and forth and also just the very short scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got them cutting back and forth between what you just said, Felicity talking to Sally and Noel and Felicity talking to each other. And then Noel's got to go.
Mhm.
So they have to say goodbye awkwardly in the elevator. Um, and then they jump right to Felicity and Julie talking about it.
Mhm.
And it just, from there, they jump right to Noel coming back into the room and Julie needing to make an exit. And all throughout, the library scenes where it's like Sean and Ben, and then, you know, Elena and Felicity, and then, you know, Noel and Felicity and Elena, and then Noel and Felicity, and then Ben and Julie. And then, I mean, I just love the way that they kept cutting between these really short scenes.
Yeah.
But we
And this
got
is a
something out of
really different
each.
style for them too, because normally something I love about Felicity is how long and drawn out the scenes are, a lot of dialogue, really like heavy conversation. And in this one, it was, like you said, really short scenes, but almost every character got to be in a scene with every other character,
Mhm.
which is so fun, right? Because I'm sure if we were to like really plot it out, some of them probably haven't had that much screen time together. And in this one, pretty much everybody got a chance to connect with each other somewhere along the way.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess maybe we can dig in a little bit to start off with thinking about Noel and Felicity. They've
Mhm.
had a couple of kisses and now they want to define their relationship.
Yeah.
And so we've had the issue with the chicken truck and
Mhm.
the timing is off, but Felicity and Julie, I mean, Julie is she's not helping matters. Felicity's already in her head. She's over analyzing. And Julie is saying, well, isn't it freaking you out? I mean, do you really want to be the rebound girl? And just as she's putting all of this stuff into Felicity's head, Noel has run up the stairs and burst into the room
Why
with
are you out of
all of
breath? I
his
don't know. I just ran up
bags.
the stairs.
Yeah,
He's
all of
just
his
excited.
bags, his coat on, like, and then just stands there for a moment while Julie makes a hasty exit. But it feels like he wants to define the relationship because for the exact reason he says at the end, which is he kind of feels like it's not real. And
Mhm.
you can, at least I felt that when he first came into the room, where it was like he had to touch her, he had to kiss her. He sort of has this thing that he does with his hand where he like almost touches her hair, and he does it a couple of times, sort of like reaching out like she's going to disappear.
Hmm.
Um, and so, I mean, on the one hand, it's endearing. On the other hand, it's a little desperate.
That's definitely something that I feel from Noel. He's a little desperate, and he is, and especially when you look at an episode like this, the humor is how incredibly uncomposed he is for almost the entire episode. Like somehow he just goes from being one version of uncomposed to another, like, and they keep finding ways to vary it up a little bit, but it's like, wow, he's still a hot mess in every scene. uh, and I actually really love it because that's Scott Foley finding subtlety and humor in the differences of how their relationship is going. Like when they're sitting in that room together in the beginning saying, what are we? I don't know. There's one vibe there. And then when he's, going down the elevator to go take care of Uncle Kenny, and he has that classic line, don't hook up with Ben while I'm gone. And it's like, ooh, because he's thinking it could happen, even though
Mhm.
there's really no evidence that that's something that could happen in the span of time he's about to be away. But it's in his mind, and then he comes back and he runs up the stairs. He doesn't even make a pit stop in his own room. He just has to like make sure the relationship in whatever form it's in is still there. in Felicity's room. Like it's just, like, there is a need that he has for her that feels a little unhealthy to me for him. And it makes me nervous for him. But right now he's getting what he wants. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. He well, I also just going to another area where he's sort of what was the word you just used? I was going to say decomposed. That's not right.
No, that would be unfortunate. He uncomposed is what I said, which could be a word I made up. Who knows? But you all know what I mean.
He's discombobulated.
Yeah.
So
he's helter skelter. I don't know, listeners. What's Noel right now?
Yeah, he's all these things and more. So he and Felicity make a pact. Mm-hmm. And they are just going to stay away from each other for finals, because when they're around each other, apparently they can't not make out, as we will see later. But, okay, so Noel still has some things that I find are issues where, like, when he comes back in, he gets very melodramatic about his sort of future and education, and he's talking to Felicity after just dropping his bags, and he says, like, my educational future is in the balance, and Felicity tries to say something and he goes, no, it's worse for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking, okay, you're a little much.
Yeah, because he's an RA and he's dealing with the other students plus his work.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we see that, he does have to deal with the indoor barbecue. Mm-hmm. Another fabulous, I think, quotable moment. People die every day from indoor barbecues.
Oh, so much to say about Richard. I'm very happy he's here now.
I mean, I really didn't remember much about Richard. I kind of remembered him later in like season 4. Mm-hmm. I didn't remember this introduction to him at all. So beautiful. But I'm loving that he's going to continue to be around. So
yeah, and in this capacity for some time. This, like, I know you're having an illicit affair with us, you're fraternizing with a student and you shouldn't be, and I'm going to hold it over you so I can get all the things I want. So there's going to be a series of episodes coming up here where he just continues to find new ways to do things that he really shouldn't be doing in a dorm room. And he's just going to, endear himself maybe to Noel, or just be annoying.
I mean, can we just all at this point admit that Noel is a crap RA? I mean, he's a terrible RA. He never should have been given this job.
Yeah, he needs to read his handbook a few more times.
So yeah. I have to come to terms with that, because he breaks all the rules, and he doesn't help anyone out other than Felicity, and he's completely unethical by giving away the Fridge of Independence. Anyway.
So, and let's be real, that indoor barbecue, there was a lot of smoke coming.
There's a lot of smoke. And at the end of the episode, we see Noel bringing Richard charcoal. Mm-hmm.
As in, like, okay, well, the jig is up. That I'm having this, embarking on this relationship, and I want you to stay quiet about it. Yeah, he's not the best RA, is he?
No, he's really not. And I also, how did they not realize this was going to be an issue? I mean, he's an RA. She's one of the students. When he's leaving to go take care of his, chicken truck hitting uncle in a coma, he says, I don't want to hold hands before we figure out what this is. But you can't hold hands in general. Like, you can't be together in public. And if Richard can blackmail you, anyone can have an issue with this. So how was this not discussed earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things that the show acknowledges as it can, and unfortunately, it would really hamstring the plot to go into it too far. But I think Richard serves the purpose of being the, I don't know, the guy representing all the residents. It's like he's the everyman. He is the embodiment of all of the residents possibly being able to bring this up. And he's going to push Noel to the edge on a number of occasions. So, yeah.
All right.
I don't know. I guess they're just kind of hoping against hope that the kids in the dorm are going to be a little bit more chill about the whole thing. But, I mean, this pact to avoid each other for 3 days really seems like it's not going to happen from the very beginning, right? Like,
agreed.
The setup for failure here.
Absolutely. So we then get these lovely scenes of them in the library together, which go from the two of them being in one of these, where you're just supposed to be alone and studying. And Felicity's trying to help Noel while Noel is smelling Felicity and
and it's worth
at her.
saying that they have to have this. So they want to stay apart for 3 days, but they immediately have to break that because Noel realizes that he's taken the wrong person's bag at the airport. The bags got switched. Somebody else has all his books and he has somebody else's stuff. So he needs help with specifically one final that Felicity can help with.
This is true, but also in looking at that bag, what we saw come out of it were boas and Elmo.
Yep.
Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that does not scream transvestite. So I don't know what else was in this bag that he was looking at, but boas and Elmo, that's what he's got.
Yeah. Well, regardless, a boa is not going to help him get ready for his finals. I think it's fair to say that his bag with his books would have been more useful. But this is the bag he has. You have to work with the bag you've got, not the bag you want.
Apparently. And this forces the two of them together, where, they have the wonderful scene of, they just start making out really kind of in front of everyone, and then actually in front of everyone once they fall off their chairs into the middle of the room. I noticed that sort of Noel is smelling her and staring at her, and he is not listening whatsoever. She does actually, I will give her this, she has a nice sweater on. It's purple. It complements her eyes. It's great. Good job, Felicity, for once. And what I notice about Felicity is Noel's being smart, and his brain is really turning her on. So when she's trying to explain the book to him, and she says, "Are you listening to me at all?" And he goes, "Yes." And then he regurgitates some, profound thing out of this book. And you just see her whole body light up. And she's like, "All right, let's go to the stacks. We'll just kiss for an hour." And at the end of the day,
the thing he remembers about the book is basically a summary of their own relationship, which is probably what she's seeing here. I mean, he says something about how, the theme of great expectations is how sacrifice, even if it's taken for granted, is still good and meaningful in the end. And so it's like, let me describe myself in this relationship with you, Felicity. And this is the romantic gesture that you're meant to take away.
Yes. And then they get busted.
So true. I liked how you commented earlier on how you were seeing sort of timing as a thread that ran through this episode. And I had a different word, but very similar, which was time. And I think those two both, they're linked. And, in this particular scene, when they're in the cubicle and they start making out, and then they just like abandon all intent to study completely. And then they just make out all the way as their chair falls onto the floor. And now everybody's looking at them. And to break the awkwardness, Noel looks up and goes, does anybody have the time? And some woman's like, it's almost 9. But time is such a thing throughout this episode. We have Elena's stopwatch. We have the countdown clock on the screen. This isn't a device that's really used very much in a show. And they're really trying to do this countdown and get you to feel the urgency, the buildup. And so there was a lot of timing and time, people missing each other just by a moment. It's really happening throughout this episode. So I think time and timing are some really good themes that run from beginning to end.
Yeah, and they have to deal with the fact that there are no cell phones as they are trying to meet up with each other. This is a particular episode that I think is very much of the 90s in terms of technology. I mean, first of all, you've got payphones where Noel is trying to figure out where Felicity is. And there's a whole library, maybe there's multiple libraries, there's rooms, there's all kinds of places she could be. So she leaves a message on his answering machine, which he then has to call with a payphone to try to figure out where she is, and she's already moved. Mm-hmm. And this was so normal. You could never find anyone, which was wonderful. But
you always find the people you didn't want to find. You ever notice that?
That's true. Always. Always ran into them. But I love just, holing up in the stacks and nobody could find me because, there's how many levels and how many little booths and stuff. I mean, good luck with that. But there were also card catalogs. I mean, nobody knows what that is anymore. There was LoJack. Do we still have that? And at one point, Richard says something to Noel about the Clinton defense. And so it's just an episode with so many references back to that point in time that I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. If technology being where it was is absolutely what made this episode happen. Had it been easy for any of these people to connect on purpose, we wouldn't have had this episode. So I think it's one of those little time capsule things that it makes a lot of sense for where we were, and hopefully still makes sense to people if they're watching it back and they've had different technology for their whole lives. But this is what it was like to try to connect with people on the fly. In fact, I would say, Felicity and Noel were using the tools they had the very best they could. They were gaming the system pretty effectively for what it was. It was just they needed to sit in one place for a hot minute. That was really a necessary thing for them.
And not make out during that minute.
Yeah, that would have helped too. But I think, one of the things that I do love about this episode is that there's all of our main characters are getting plenty of time to interact with each other, but then we're also introducing like these new people or these very minor characters that some of them will never see again. And they continue to show up as new characters move into that space. So as much as we have these vignettes, these two people talking, these three people, we also have these like the guy who's hiccuping, or like Richard is constantly moving through the episode. And these people keep showing, like Sean, he's selling fruit, but then we see him walk through the scene as Noel's on the phone to sell fruit. So like there was the separation between these scenes, but there was also a thread that bound them all together. And so Richard has a lot of work to do in this episode because we meet him for the first time. We're certainly going to get to know him better. He's always going to be this frustrating. And he's great. We love him. I do anyway. But him sort of continuing to dig at Noel about whether or not he's fit to be an RA, that's going to be something where now Noel has to get up and chase him and make sure like that, Richard's not going to report him. So Richard is going to be bringing Noel out of the room consistently. And he's a very important device in this episode, but he also brings us gems of lines like, I'm going to report your ass. Oh my goodness. It's one of the best things that's ever been said on this show, I think. Because he catches Noel and Felicity kissing in the stacks, and now he's really not sure that Noel is fit to be an RA. And so really for the rest of the episode, Noel's going to be looking for Felicity because he went out to chase Richard. And so this is a really important thing that drives movement.
Yeah, and he does pop up at some very unfortunate times. I mean, Noel is really running around and he's got his own stuff to do, and then he runs into Meghan and she sells him something. And to me, it looked a little bit like, vitamin powder in the way it sort of crackled. I don't know if that was even a thing back then, but like emergency. And he drinks it and then he freaks out.
Yep. And on paper, she says it's all organic. It's roots and stuff. It's fine. It's it's smart powder. It gives you a photographic memory. It's all good. It's healthy. It's unfortunate though that Noel has a reaction to beets, which is one of the ingredients of smart powder.
Oh yes. And so I just love Noel running around and the music that is playing in the background while he's running around trying to find Felicity. And then he finds her with Ben. And Ben has really used this kind of emotional manipulation around his paper to get Felicity to focus on him. And, I love that the two of them are just reading poetry back and forth to each other while Noel is pacing back and forth in front of this glass window, and they've got the subtitles on so you can actually hear him or read him saying "arg," pacing off again.
It's so great. So I will say, just to back it up a moment, again, the subtitles in this episode are something that I remembered being throughout the episode, but in reality, they start about a third of the way in. And it's a device they use because they've got these characters in libraries in varying states of silent. So they have to speak in whispers. And so the first time we see the subtitles happen in this episode is with Ben and Julie. And he's complaining about a poem he's trying to read. Like, I think it was Ode or Grecian Urn or something like that. And he's just commiserating with Julie over how hard it is to study for their finals, her microeconomics one, and for him, it's poetry. And so that sets up the subtitles. And most of the time we're seeing subtitles used because people are in a room where they can't speak very loudly or at all. And by the time Noel shows up, I believe Felicity and Ben are in a silent reading room where you're meant to speak not at all. And there Felicity and Ben are talking in whispers, but talking nonetheless, which is probably infuriating to everybody in the room. So we consistently get the shh subtitle from everybody else. And then we see Noel jump in, and now he's not at a whisper level because he's had this smart powder.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I will admit bugs me because, I would go and I would study by myself where it was quiet, or if I was in a quiet room, there's just always those like 2 or 3 people or a whole group of people or a whole table of people that are whispering. And of course, the whispering always turns to giggling. And you're just sitting there banging your head against something because it clearly says, Do not talk. You have an entire library in which
Mhm.
to talk. Not only do you have that, but you also have every other room in the entire freaking world where you can talk. This is the one place.
Like everywhere in the universe is on limits except for the
Yes,
room you're in.
except for this one room.
Oh.
So for everyone who's ever done that, shut up. Just shut up. Go somewhere else
This is our
because
rant
I
from Fish.
don't like it. The other person that I feel so bad for is Elena. Everyone keeps bothering her. She's got her system and her cards and her M&Ms and her stopwatch, and everyone is just coming up to her, behind her. She says, "Go away. I've got my stuff. I'm doing my thing." And they just sit down and start talking to her.
Or eat
I
her
mean,
M&Ms.
or eat her study aids. I mean, what is up with these people? These people are so rude.
Yeah, it's not good. And
Anyway,
she's not buying any of it, by the way. She's like, oh, do you have time to help both these guys, Felicity? And Noel doesn't mind that you're helping Ben. I don't buy any of this. Felicity's like, yep, neither do I. And then it's like, get out of my face and stop eating my M&Ms.
yep.
Yeah,
And she smacks her hand, as she should.
absolutely fair. Whatever the system is, it involves, a bowl full of M&Ms. She's putting them in lines as I guess she gets right answers. She's got a stopwatch. She's clearly got something that is not to be interrupted. And yet every single person interrupts her. And I really enjoy when Noel, right after taking the smart powder, interrupts her looking for Felicity. And he's really hyper and he's like, why are you talking so slowly? And she checks for his heart rate and she just goes, that can't be your heart. Oh man, he's got a problem.
He does. You'd think he would check, some organic powder with roots in it. He would have thought, maybe this is not something to be put in my body.
Yeah, he's got one job. That is not to eat beets.
Yeah.
He has two jobs. There's being a good RA, which we know he's
Well,
already
no,
failing
we
at.
already know that's not a thing.
Yeah, that's a problem already. And then we've got, him not eating beets. And apparently when you give him a job, he's not going to do it. That's it.
Apparently. Yep.
Ugh.
So he eats the beets, and then he finds Ben and Felicity together in the silent room, and just eventually, after pacing back and forth at least 3 times, bursts into the room and starts yelling that the two of them shouldn't be together, and Felicity is supposed to be helping him, not Ben, and she's supposed to be liking him, not Ben.
And he starts with, this is unacceptable. And this is my absolute favorite part of this episode. First of all, Santa Swings is playing in the background, and it's been getting progressively faster throughout the episode. And it's at a fever pitch now. And the subtitles are now in all caps. This is unacceptable. And he's just explosive.
He is, in the best possible way for us, not for him, because, both Ben and Felicity are sort of looking at him. He's a little insane, which he is. And then, poor Noel, Richard's there. He's there again. He turns around from the silent room and lets him know, you were definitely not a good RA.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the breaking point,
Yeah.
for Richard there, which I fully understand. So yeah, not a good RA.
It's just so wonderful. I mean, and afterwards we find out that Felicity thinks Noel was such a freak.
Yes, which he was.
He was, yeah. So the other thing worth tracking here is Ben and Felicity, right? So this is a separate thread that's going, but obviously it's all weaving together. And partway into the episode, after Felicity has agreed to help Noel with his Great Expectations final, Ben comes up to her, like you said, he does that emotional manipulation of the situation, where he's like, look, you messed up my grade with that, that paper that we failed because you rewrote it. And he doesn't call it out by name, but we know exactly what he's referring to. And he says, I need your help. And there's really no way to say no to that. So she says yes to help him with the poetry. He has to study the Keats and all these other poems that he doesn't understand. And so he gets her to meet him in the next, 20 minutes in this other room, where they're going to start unpacking the poems. And now that's forcing Noel to try to chase after her and find where she is for pretty much the rest of the episode. And, this one's kind of interesting because we know from Thanksgiving, or the last episode, that Ben saw the makeout between Felicity and Noel in the bathroom. He knows that Hannah was at Thanksgiving. I presume he knows that Hannah's not in the picture anymore. And he hasn't let on that he knows Felicity and Noel might be a thing. And so he's hinting around it a lot in this episode. And, that first scene where Felicity and Ben are studying together, there's a lot happening in that scene, because partly they're studying, partly he's distracted and he wants to talk about pizza and not poetry. Well, partly there's a guy in the room hiccuping.
Yep.
And then also he's trying to get across that he's wondering what's up with Felicity and Noel. So he's doing a lot of work here in that scene.
Yeah, it's, he does say earlier when he's trying to get her to help him that he's not a moron. But then the two of them are sitting together and he really does not understand poetry and what's going on there. I don't understand why he was taking a poetry class. It doesn't seem like he wants to be an English lit professor. So maybe this was all that was left. We know he was left with some unfortunate choices. I don't know if we're ever going to get to see the acting class again. But yeah, he's talking about Christmas. He's asking about Noel because, they were going in that romantic direction, and then the paper happened. But then again, apparently by the end of the next episode, he was fine with her again, and they started talking. And then we had 2 episodes where that was not the focus. And so now we're coming back around to him and trying to figure out where his feelings are. He's had a little bit of time. He's asking for her help. He's seen Noel and her kiss. I don't know how much competition is coming into this, because not only is he getting closer to Felicity and kind of trying to figure out what's going on, he takes care of Noel. He takes him to get something to eat and try to calm him down from the beats. And, he is poking around trying to figure out exactly what's going on between them. And I don't really have a pulse on why, because I do think he does look at Felicity a couple of times in that way. But at the same time, he's also talking to Julie and, he has this bro bonding moment with Noel where Noel says that, that Ben is an unrequited nightmare. And Ben's like, no, she likes you. Like, don't worry about it. So he's poking around. I think he has a little interest, but I don't know that he is ready to jump into anything with her. So, but he I don't know, maybe he's trying to keep his options open a bit.
Yeah, I guess he's just waiting to see how things play out with Felicity and Noel. I agree. I think I see a little bit of something there from him. I think he's more intrigued now that there's another prospect in the mix. But he was connecting with her before. And, the fact that Felicity is distracted by other things in her world now has made her more real with Ben. You know, she's being with him the way she would be with other people. You know, the things that we love about her, she's now starting to show that side of herself to Ben. She is dropping her level of desperation that she had for Ben, you know, in the beginning of this season, and coming at him in a way that feels a lot more natural. And you know, I think it really parallels what we've seen with how Noel treats Felicity, that level of desperation. And right now, that level of desperation seems to be turning her head. So,
or something.
Or something.
I don't know that it's the desperation. It definitely, you see the moments when she, you know, starts to get into it. And it's always, well, so we had the one after he gave his little Great Expectations speech. But the other times too, like he'll kiss her, she'll seem shocked. And then she does the same thing every time. She like goes up and grabs his head, sort of in a, you know, now I'm going to kiss you kind of way. But I also feel like it's kind of restraining him a bit too. It's like, okay, let's try this again. Little better for me this time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it really does your mileage may vary on what you think of those kisses between Noel and Felicity. You already know my thoughts. I've already poisoned how Fish looks at it. I apologize for that. So, but yeah, there is definitely just a level of urgency in those kisses that we're getting right now. And, you know, I think Ben is really the opposite. Ben is kind of the picture of restraint here. And we're getting a lot of subtlety from him. So it is interesting to see those two contrasted. I do enjoy that moment while they're in the first location where they're studying, and there's that guy who just can't stop with the hiccups. And they just continue to interrupt their scene with looking over at him and giving him advice on how to stop hiccups. And it progressively, you know, doesn't work. And finally, Felicity makes the bad decision to say, well, you know what I do? I hold a penny between my toes and think of 3 bald men. And unfortunately, this guy happens to be bald. So he's like, so then you just want me to, I'll just think of me and 2 other guys. And it's like this great moment, just this humor that's happening. And, you know, we'll see that same guy in the room later when Noel goes to find Meghan, and or at least sees Meghan. So it's nice that these people keep showing up throughout.
Yeah, they're making the library real. They're bringing us into their world of library chaos.
Well, and then there's also the guy much earlier on who's like weirdly happy while everybody else is stressed out and studying, and Felicity decides to approach him and ask what his secret is, and he's like, I'm on a strict regimen and I have antidepressants. She's like, oh, and then he starts trying to, like, he's like, oh, well, I've been thinking that I should tell you about it. And she's like, who are you? And why are you thinking I need this information? He's like, you're just a little intense. She's like, me?
Well, and he also mentions her sweaters, which are clearly a cry for help. So, you know, I understand where he's coming from. I don't know that that's the best picture of what antidepressants do. Probably, again, okay to make fun of in the 90s, according to popular culture, not so much today. But yeah, he did seem like he was going to fail his finals. I mean, it did not seem like, while he seemed happy enough, that that it was going to help him in any way, shape, or form to pass.
Yeah, really hard to say. You know,
it wasn't though. He was reading a magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, That's what we knew about antidepressants, I guess. Oh, I don't know. Dr. Carlisle didn't get the best recommendation from this one. But he was a doctor that could give you the pills that would
Yep,
make you lighten
saved
up.
his life, was
Hmm.
saving it right then when he was offering them to Felicity. Just so everyone knows, cautionary, um, federal crime. That's a federal crime. Don't
Oof.
do that. Do not offer your medication to other people.
Well, he wasn't worried about much, was he?
Nope. No, he was not.
Oof. So also let's talk about Sean and Julie because they've got their own little thing
Yes,
going on here.
they do. Sean, first, I love Sean and Ben, how they've really just settled into being good roommates.
Mhm.
Sean comes in with this cooler on top of a bunch of boxes and says, "Want to help me out here?" And Ben says, "Nope." So, but yeah, Sean, he's an entrepreneur who apparently went to Harvard. Um,
Harvard summer program.
okay. I missed that
He's
part
like, I
of
went
it.
to Harvard, not like the university. I went like for the summer program. He's
Ah,
like, he had to
all
walk it
right.
back a little bit. She's like, oh, Harvard. He's like, well, not the business school.
I missed that. All right. I'm feeling better about Harvard at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason, I don't know if he's never had a final in his life or what kind of weird things he does when studying, but he has decided that oranges and bananas and apples are the things that kids who are studying want.
Mm-mm.
Now, if you were studying at this moment, Melissa,
Mhm.
what are the things you would want?
I mean, I think you would get something that comes in a bag of like chips or
Yep,
like
yep,
some sort of comfort food
yep,
or snacky food, I would
yes.
say. So I know a lot of.
We've got chips, we got the M&Ms, so we got candy, caffeine,
Mhm.
these are things that people actually eat while studying. A
Mhm. Mhm.
banana, not not so much, but
Seems
he
like
does
Sean
try.
needs a little more market research on this one.
He did. Maybe this was his market research. I don't think he probably bankrupted himself with the amount of fruit that he bought, but here's the other thing. Is it just me? What kind of library allows you to eat fruit in it?
Mhm.
Like, who allows a guy to walk around with a bunch of food that you're then gonna eat in the library?
This brings to mind an episode that's going to come up in season 4 that involves somebody with an entire plate of spaghetti. I can't even say it without laughing. A very important entire plate of spaghetti in the library.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
this I don't
that's not a
feel
thing.
like is a thing.
No, I really don't think this was allowed.
Yeah.
But apparently for him, it is. Um, Maybe they make an exception for entrepreneurs that went to Harvard summer school.
Well,
Um,
also, if you were a librarian, if you were an administrator, and you saw somebody who doesn't go to that school, who's older than all the people who go to that school, who comes in specifically to sell product.
Also, how did he get in? Don't you remember having to swipe into the library?
I do.
Did he just like run in after Ben swiped his with his whole cooler?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe this is like the outtake scene like from Dirty Dancing. I carried a watermelon. I carried a cooler.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's deep cut,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
okay.
Look, this episode was confusing, and that's okay. It was very chaotic, and all the things were happening. But we have learned from Sean that he understands economics,
Hmm.
which I appreciate because I too uh, do economics. So he comes up with these different ideas. He knows supply and demand analysis, um, which, in case you're not familiar, if you have a lot of something, that's called supply. If you don't have much demand, if people don't want it, you're not going to sell it.
Hmm.
So this is currently a wonderful example of he has a lot of fruit and nobody wants it.
Hmm.
But he seems to have forgotten marketing.
Hmm.
And we thankfully have someone on this podcast, Melissa, who knows all about marketing.
Mm.
And so please give us your take on what ends up happening with the fruit.
Well, he ends up partnering up with Julie, and she needs information about microeconomics for a final that she has coming up. She doesn't understand the topic, and Sean has the knowledge. And Julie has something to offer him as well. She can
I think
be,
it's boobs.
yeah, she is going to be the sexy symbol of this fruit sales enterprise. Uh, and she can even up the level of it. He was trying to sell an apple for $1. She can do it for $2, uh, just by simply batting her eyelashes, holding out her hand with an apple, and getting $1 or $2 put into it. So he's figured out that maybe the package wasn't right. Maybe there
Mm,
needed to be a different spokesperson behind this particular business. I think there are a variety of mistakes he made in his marketing campaign and his idea of how he was going to sell this. But it seems like we yada yada through that, and we fixed it by just making Julie like the epitome of the perfect salesperson, without trying to be. And I also think when you think about like the desperation element of the relationship stuff we're seeing, I think the same thing can be said of sales. Like when you have a business and you're trying to sell something, the harder you're trying, the more desperate it seems and the less the person wants to buy it from you. But it's like when you really don't need the sale, you get it. And I feel like that's how it played out here, because Sean was like, oh, I just need to move this fruit. And Julie is like, I feel horrible. Nobody would buy this banana for $1. And then sure enough, it happens. So I think desperation plays in to the sales process a bit, and may explain why Julie was more successful, in addition to the fact that she's a cute female.
yep. Um, so that's Sean and Julie. They clearly should go into business together, and I hope that happens later.
We'll do a few little tiny things together, little projects like this, as time goes on. So it won't be the last time we see a collaboration together, I would say. But I do like that, that Sean and Ben vibe of them being roommates, and they figured out their cadence with each other. And in that beginning, Sean's unloading the elevator with all this fruit in it, and he's like, what is the one thing desperate college students need to survive? And Ben just looks at him and he's like, well, I'm going to say fruit. Because that's what Sean is unloading from the elevator, and makes sense. Like, that's got to be the answer here for the week. So yeah, I do like the fact that this particular thing that he's selling is portable, and it becomes a tool for Sean to be walking through a variety of scenes selling fruit throughout the episode. It is just one of the things that really hooks it all together for me.
Oh my. Oh, Sean.
Yeah.
Well, as we start to get towards the end of the episode, a few things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So Felicity finally, after Noel's outburst, says, I'm done. I'm done with both of you. I got my own stuff to do. And she goes and she finds Elena, and we get this lovely scene with Christmas music behind it of Elena and Felicity side by side using the M&M method,
Mhm.
whatever that is. So she herself, she has learned to say no, and she has learned to put herself first and ask for help. I mean, look at that. It's all just tied up in one little bow with Christmas music and M&Ms. And
Yes,
who
and
doesn't
during
like
that
that?
time, we're going to get a very large sign put up by one of her
Yes.
fellow dorm mates that says absolute silence required. And he looks dead at Felicity, stares into her eyes, and just dares her to talk.
Yeah, notice how he doesn't look at Elena.
Mm-hmm.
No. Elena's not the one who's been making out with all the boys and giggling all over the library and, no.
Yeah,
She's not a good
there's
library goer.
no.
She has no respect.
And this
No respect.
guy is making sure she knows the rules.
Well, she knew the rules before. She
She
just
did.
didn't care.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
She was too overcome with her own lust over Noel's intelligence and giggling with Ben. So
Yeah.
pretty much boys are the problem.
And I do think at this point in the episode, because we sort of had the build up, we have the fever pitch where Noel that matches when Noel is high on the smart powder or feeling the impacts or the reaction to the beats. And after that, the episode kind of drops in level. It gets more subdued. And we'll see Felicity taking one of her finals. Noel knocks on the door and Felicity gives her paper to her professor so she can go to the bathroom and have a conversation with Noel, which doesn't really seem like a thing you should do, but that's what they did. And Noel gives the bad news. Uncle Kenny died. Seemed like it was going okay. Got hit by the chicken truck, or he hit the chicken truck, or he was the chicken truck. We don't know. But either way, he had recovered from his coma. He seemed like he was going to be fine, and he took a turn for the worse. And this man
And
is no
then
longer
another
with
turn
us.
for the worse.
Mm-hmm.
2 turns for the worse. I didn't know that he had woken up from the coma. I
Well,
missed that.
at one point when Noel first came back and he ran up the stairs and showed up in Felicity's room, he said, Uncle Kenny was going to be fine. They expect him to make a full recovery, but it was not to be so. The doctors spoke too soon. And R.I.P. Uncle Kenny.
Oh, poor. I mean, they killed Kenny.
They did.
They did.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And right around now, Noel doesn't seem particularly close with Uncle Kenny, but he has some responsibilities and he's going to have to go back right away and start taking care of things at home. And he just sort of is calmer in this scene. He's more subdued, probably because there's been a death in the family and also because he's no longer on the smart powder. And maybe he just has worked some of this anxious energy out of his system. He can't sustain that level forever. And, he just sort of says to her, you know what, we don't really know where we are, but I love where we are and we'll figure it out when we get back to school. And it's easily the most patient version of Noel I've seen the whole series so far.
I mean, I was a little on edge during it because when he said I love, I was just worried that the next word coming out of his mouth was gonna be you. So that didn't happen. That's okay. Great. They've just kissed a couple of times. Don't blow it, Noel. So he does have this insecurity, and I think that's why he wanted to define everything.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he wanted to define it because, when he comes back, it might be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't remember what happens, but it could be gone. But we do see that Ben's not going to be in Palo Alto. Mm-hmm. So at the very least, that's going to be helpful. They say this long drawn out goodbye, I'll see you in a month. But, phones exist. And that was what was in my head. I was thinking,
Mm-hmm.
you can call each other. And what we see right after that scene is a cut to Felicity calling someone. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's nice. She's calling Noel. Nope. She's calling Ben to see if he wants to go to the airport with her. And Ben says, I'm not going back. Just going to hang out here for the month. And I didn't remember, but I just knew because they weren't panning far enough over for you to see what was next to him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's gotta be Julie. She's gotta be there.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this, reignited relationship ish. I don't know if it's going to turn into a full blown relationship because it was just a one night stand before. But Julie's in bed with Ben. And honestly, at this point, I think Ben and Julie probably make a good pair for each other. And Noel and Felicity are going to be hilarious for us to watch
Mm-hmm.
because the two of them they're just so similar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of hope that when they come back from this break, they still manage to be together and awkward and all that kind of stuff. But both Felicity and Ben, and frankly, Julie and Noel, are going to have to deal with this, I don't know, square. I can't really call it a love square, but I mean, like, it's a couple of triangles, I guess. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like Julie and Ben, she's been through a lot and he's made her feel safe and they relate to each other. And so I just kind of like them. Um, but I do think it would be kind of boring. So
Well, and it's
I'm
also worth
stuck
saying,
there.
like, because you mentioned that the camera pans when Ben hangs up the phone, the camera pans and shows that he is in bed with Julie. But when we say he's in bed with Julie, they're clothed. She's kind of huddled on her side, and he kind of like spoons her and is protecting her. It looks like he's taking a protector role with Julie. And so I don't know what that is. We don't know what that is. They haven't talked about what that is. This is the first time they're introducing back to us that maybe these two have been spending time together or are going to. And it makes you think back to early in this episode when Julie was saying, well, what is it? And Felicity says, well, why can't it just be whatever it is? And Julie says, because it's never whatever it is. And she starts asking this litany of questions about, well, how can you define, like, can you see other people? Or like, she's giving her planting all these seeds in Felicity's head about Felicity and Noel's relationship. But now that we've seen this scene at the end of the episode, it's like, well, maybe she's having to ask all those same questions about Julie's own relationship with Ben because we didn't have the information up front, but she's probably in a similar place right now of trying to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, I guess it says something about me. It never even occurred to me that they weren't sleeping together. So, but maybe that is the case given, what she's been through. But I guess when I see, two people in bed, college age, waking up together or, sleeping through the night together, and we haven't seen kind of the build up to it, just kind of assume they're hanging out, they're together. I mean, maybe not as like boyfriend girlfriend, but at least they're kind of hanging out. But maybe
Well, I
we'll
guess
see
I'm
that.
bringing my future knowledge in, and I know that she doesn't know what this is right now. I think Julie is still very much dealing with the aftermath of Zach. And I don't think she's in a place right now where she's prepared to think about having a sexual relationship with somebody. So, spoiler alert, like they don't know what they are yet. And the show is just telling us like, ooh, these two, look at these as a pair of something. But we have even less information about what they are a pair of than we have about where Felicity and Noel are.
I
So,
like that better. I mean, it did seem awfully fast for
mhm.
her to be jumping back into something. So I do like knowing that better. Also, spoiler alert has to go before you actually spoil it.
Well, technically, I said it at the very beginning
You
of
did.
this
You
podcast.
did. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
folks, if you've gotten all the way here, consider yourself warned from minute one. um, yes, it's very true. I think it, and the reason I wanted to distinguish that here, and I wouldn't necessarily normally distinguish something like that, but we just came off, I mean, we had Thanksgiving, but we just came off Julie experiencing sexual violence, right? So like this is really fresh for her, and this show is not going to let it go that quickly. They in Thanksgiving, they certainly had her still thinking about it. The idea of like, how do I tell my parents? Not feeling comfortable to go back home, crying in her bed. Like she's still dealing with this. So there's no one right way to deal with it. And it's not for me to say to somebody who has survived something like this that you shouldn't jump into another relationship right away. But if you were sitting here thinking, wow, she jumped in really fast to this thing with Ben, well, she's figuring it out. And this storyline for her is going to continue to weave into the future episodes, which is one of the reasons I like how they handled it, because it's not just like, oh, but we're going to give these 2 episodes to this story and then it's done. No, they really wanted to make this part of what her character is dealing with in college for some time. So I think, it's perhaps more complex to look at it like, how does she figure that out in the context of something with Ben? It's murky, it's messy, it's really involves like examining in a close way what her comfort zone is. And I think that's actually there's more juice to squeeze out with that in this context.
Yeah. I'm glad that the two of them are together in whatever sense they are. I think they both would be good for each other at this point in their lives. So
seems like it, right? I mean, in terms of like even how Ben handled approaching Julie in Drawing the Line Part 2, he really was able to empathize with her. And where she might have felt defensive with some of the other people who were making decisions on her behalf, he gave her a lot of space and let her be how she was, and just opened up a piece of himself to help her connect to him. And so I think that's a really good foundation to go with here. So, I think they did what they could in this episode. They were going for, I guess, shock value, sort of, with the panning down to Julie on the bed. But I think they made as many steps as they could in the direction of like, they're both fully clothed. She's like really bundled under the covers. He goes in for a hug that looks more like he's trying to keep her safe, as much as they could make it that way. So there's a way to make that look really sexy. And I think they tried to steer away from it as much as possible.
yeah, I think because she was sleeping and it was morning and it was such a short scene, we just don't get a lot of information. And I jumped to conclusions. Oops.
Well, here I am ruining it. But such is life. I think one of the things I do like about this episode is that we when you're in college, usually Christmas, specifically Christmas, is during a break. That the same cannot necessarily be said for Hanukkah, but Hanukkah probably falls during finals most of the time. But Christmas is usually during a break. So to have a Christmas episode would be weird because normally in a college setting, that is a time when a lot of people go back to wherever home is. If you live off campus or you have a place where you can stay, maybe you stay in, if you have an apartment, maybe you do not go home and you stay wherever college is for you. But for a lot of us, that is a time when it's a break from school. So to have a Christmas episode would be like, why would these people all be together on campus, especially at this point? So I like that they're weaving in holiday themes to the extent that they felt they could in this episode. We're also going to get a call back to the holidays in the first episode coming back from this break. But they don't try to do like a major holiday episode here. I think they wove in finals, and this feels a little bit more to me like how it would have felt in college.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you might put up a few little decorations in December, but really it was all about finals. And then once you were done with your finals, you didn't stick around if you were going home. You went
Mm-hmm.
home. So, yeah, that would not have made sense, especially if we don't know where a lot of them, live. I mean, we got some of that in the Thanksgiving episode, so we already know a little bit about the families, so we wouldn't want to redo that episode.
Mm-hmm. And that is also very true to me to how it felt in college, because like you have a break for Thanksgiving and then you have a break right on the back of that for, your winter break or holiday break, whatever they call it. It feels like a long time to be away, or it did to me. And for me, it was always a little shorter because I did a winter sport. So at my school, at our school, they would bring us back, the winter athletes, a couple weeks early, I want to say, uh, maybe almost like 2.5 weeks early, pretty much right after New Year's, you would go back to school and they would open up one dorm. Like there were people who lived off campus, they could still live off campus. But if you lived on campus, you couldn't just go back to wherever your dorm was because they didn't want to heat every single building. So they just opened one dorm and piled all of the athletes into it. So you kind of relocated for a few weeks and you were living in somebody else's room. And then you went back to your dorm on a particular date. So I had a shorter break than a lot of people did. And it still felt like a really long time to be away. It felt like such a disruption to your life, like the friendships you were building and your day to day that you were experiencing while in class was just on hiatus for, it just felt like a long time. So a lot of that feeling gets captured here in this episode and the last episode for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, Depending on what you did with your finals, I mean, she's saying it was 3 days. Ours were like 2 weeks, I
Mm-hmm.
think. So you actually could have, almost an extra 2 weeks of vacation if you had all your finals up front. And there's a number of people who would try to only write papers, especially, after freshman year or something like that. So you didn't have to sit for any exams. So I wasn't big on taking tests. I never really enjoyed that experience. So I would try to get as many papers as I could. Or sometimes you could do a special project instead of just sitting for an exam. So, yeah, or sometimes I remember I had to go back to have surgery one year. And so they let me take my exams early. So there were a lot of things that you could do to be a little bit more flexible, I guess. It's not like high school. So, and it probably varies college to college, but I can't imagine any college of a decent size where everyone takes their exams in 3 days. I don't know if there's enough classroom space for that.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I think logistically that would be really complicated. Um, but I don't know if they were saying like 3 days to study and then they'd have their finals. Not really sure. I think some schools do have like a reading week before they have finals. So like you have a week that's really just set aside for studying. So I guess it is a little different from place to place. In our situation, you kind of just rolled into the finals, but the final, those finals could happen over the span of a couple of weeks. So you were kind of studying for them as they came up. And if you had papers to write, you just had to sort of plan out, or you had to do time management to figure out how you were going to get it all done.
And I definitely liked it better that way. So, yep, I
Yeah.
give college an A+ as opposed to high school for all of the many, many finals and midterms and other tests. I mean, on the one hand, you only had a couple of chances, which is why this paper made probably a huge difference in Ben and Felicity's grades
Mm-hmm.
for that one class. But on the other hand, you're not always taking tests. So they kind of leave it up to you to figure it out because you're starting to be an adult. So figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, and I guess to the degree that you can make choices like that, it's also part of how you get to know yourself. I mean, for me, I found like, I don't know if I love tests or papers, to be honest, but I found like papers seemed like a good idea, but only if I had figured out how the professor wanted papers to be written.
Mhm.
Because sometimes I found it was very arbitrary. Like papers that I was proud of didn't always get the best grades compared to papers that were written just for what you think the professor wants. So there was a little bit more subjectivity to a paper that like I could manage my time differently and perhaps more efficiently with having a bunch of papers, but I also felt like there's less, it's less of a sure outcome when it's a subjective grade.
That is true. Um, I don't know. I found if I went and talked to the professors, and also if you have other papers due throughout the semester, you can get a pretty good gauge on what's being looked for. And, sometimes you just piss your professor off by calling her Mrs.
Yeah. Oh,
Oops.
yeah. I heard about that one. That was not the warm, fuzzy experience you want to have.
Nope.
Oh my
No, it wasn't.
goodness. Well, I know that you had a chance to do your rant. You came for every single person who speaks in a silent reading room, as
Or
you
eats.
should,
Or eats.
or
That's
eats.
also not okay.
Yeah. But I'm going to give you my note from an optimist, and I'm just going to pull from a thread I started to address earlier. That that value of balance in your life that can result in having more patience. And I think we're starting to see this with Felicity as she relates to Ben. By the end of this episode, perhaps we're seeing a more subdued version of Noel, which we desperately needed to see. Though it was really funny to see him unglued for the whole beginning of it. But I think as you start having other stuff occupying your mind or other things happening in your life, sometimes that helps you have more of a perspective on what you thought was really important before. And I think in the case of Felicity and Ben, we're seeing that Felicity, now that she's got all these other things going on in her world, she's being much more natural with him. She's being much more herself, and she's bringing a more authentic version of her to that relationship. And it's more attractive to Ben as a result. And she desperately wanted to be attractive to him before, but it was the desperation that drove him away, really. And now that she's got other stuff going on, it's allowing her to just be who she is in that setting. And hopefully we're starting to see a little bit more of that with Noel, or we will soon, where he can be a little bit more patient because he's got other things to focus on. He has to deal with Uncle Kenny's death, and he had his finals, and he's got this Richard stuff to deal with. And hopefully for him, there's just going to be more things that create balance in his life. But I think there's something to be said for this. Like sometimes the best way to move something forward is to look away from it for a second and to let it do its own thing. You find the lost item when you stop looking, kind of thing. So I think there's a lesson in that for all of us, and hopefully we're starting to see it play out here.
It's very nice to have our notes from an optimist after my random rants.
Well, let's just address what Sally said, what Sally meant. We got another one here. We heard a bunch from Felicity to Sally at the start of the episode, and Sally caps it off with her tape back to Felicity. So you ready to tackle that one, Fish?
I am indeed.
All right. So she says, "Dear Felicity."
Oh, thank God it is a Christmas miracle. You have moved on to a new guy.
For some reason, in the past few months, I've become a real believer in not defining every single thing.
I can finally come out of witness protection. Ned or Neil, whatever, you don't have to define anything. All that's important is that you're not stalking Ben anymore. Good job, Felicity. Good job.
Seems like every time you think you figured out what something is, it just becomes something else.
I cannot wait to get out of this friggin' desert and have a real Christmas with snow and cider, ice skating, wood-burning fires. I might even go skiing instead of sitting in the lodge all day.
My first Christmas at college was incredibly strange.
My handler, Emmett, and I will have to figure out what's next for us, but we've already been talking about it.
I remember leaving Brown really excited to get home.
I don't want to freak you out, but after that whole paper thing, they were starting to move in on you.
I got back to California.
I don't know exactly who they are, but they managed to plant a few people to keep an eye on you.
And I was with my parents in the house I grew up in.
There was one guy, Lucas, but he ended up having a problem with his roommate. We thought you might be onto us and had put the idea of stabbing him in his roommate's head.
I just remember lying in bed feeling homesick.
Then there was Daryl. He was pretty green. He went off on some guy named Zach because he thought he was compromised. Ended up being a terrible plant as an RA, so we had to pull him.
I hope everything works out with you and Noel.
But their best asset is a tech whiz. I don't know anything about them, just that they're very close to you. And we're testing out microphone underwear a while back.
I have hope.
They were going to arrest you before the holidays, but Emmett said they needed more evidence. Apparently they planted some top secret device to gather it. I don't know anything about it, other than they call it the box, and you're never supposed to shake it.
And I wish you both 3,000 miles apart a Merry Christmas.
But it's all fine now. You've stopped following Ben. You haven't asked for his blood once. And now you're even kissing other guys. This is amazing. I'm sure you and Ned are going to be perfect for each other. Time to hit the slopes.
Well,
our continuation.
This really tied it all together, didn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know?
I mean,
we'll have to see whether it lasts, but she's pretty excited at this point.
I guess we need to be suspect of every single new character we meet in the show moving forward.
I mean, I would be. Yeah.
Wow. Well, in terms of feedback we ourselves have gotten, in our After You Listen to This Tape, You Have to Erase It segment, I just wanted to share, I had a quick interaction with the folks at Ripcord Entertainment. who are, the agency behind the Swingtips song, Santa Swings. Because that song certainly, at least in the DVD version, gets really highlighted in this episode. We'll hear it a number of times. It was definitely added an energy. And so they had some thoughts about it. They said, when we first saw the episode, we laughed our asses off. It just kept getting faster and faster. Ha. So that's, thumbs up from the people behind the music. It seems like it was a good representation.
And I liked it. It's not your normal Christmas song, and it had just the right amount of energy to match Noel's pace.
Yeah, it had that sort of jive spirit behind it. And, we needed something to match Noel's hyper energy. And goodness, that song was up to the task. But let's take a look at our rating for this episode overall, Fish. So, I don't know, what did you think of this one?
Well, I mean, I think you've already given a spoiler alert on what you're going to give it. So I guess we can start with me. I loved the little vignettes. I loved how funny it was and the music. I mean, everything about it. It was just a really fun episode. I think for me, you need those episodes, especially in a show like this that isn't really an overall comedy. So I very much enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say that it's sort of the most moving for me. When I'm watching a drama, I kind of want something that's going to either kind of rip my heart out a bit, or that is two people coming together. Some of the, I think, more dramatic episodes have more of an effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
But I just really like this one, so I'm going to go ahead and give it an 8. But that's the reason it's not a 10 for me. Is it didn't have that kind of sort of gripping story under it where I really felt for the characters.
Mm-hmm. That's totally fair. And I also, I like a good drama, and I love that this show has so many moments that make you feel, that are really emotional. And actually, the other episode that I think of in my favorites list is much more dramatic and has a lot more of the feels. This one, though, one amazing line after another. I mean, the whole episode is quotable and really memorable. And so, yeah, for me, as you might be able to imagine, this one's going to be a 10 out of 10. And 10 out of 10, what, you may ask? Well, I thought I'd go with smart powder drinks.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot. That's going to be a lot for Noel to handle.
That's going to be way too much for him to handle. He can't even handle a 1 out of 10. So it's a lot, but 10 out of 10 for me. I totally appreciate that this show does emotional really well. And, they spent a lot of time in that area a couple episodes ago. And I do think it needed to be broken up a bit here. So this show disrupts with this episode.
Yes.
And I do think it was needed for the pacing of this season.
Absolutely. I can see it.
Yeah. So let's just remind everybody, for those who want to share feedback with us, we would absolutely love to hear from you. What do you think about this show? What do you think about any of the upcoming episodes? If you want to share feedback, or even if you've got artwork that you've done for Felicity fan art, feel free to share that with us at themelissafish@gmail.com. That's Melissa with 1 L, 2 S's, themelissafish@gmail.com. You can also find us and a pretty awesome community of Felicity fans at our Instagram at Felicity Podcast. And then if you would like to be notified when we have a new episode come out, we do have a newsletter that goes out once an episode drops. So you can check out the show notes so that you can sign up for that. But we continue to have a bunch of fun episodes on the way here. The next one is going to be called Gimme an O.
Interesting.
Yep. So we'll see what that one's about. But any other thoughts here before we close out, Fish?
Nope, I think that's all from me.
Well, okay, then. I guess that's everything. So until next time, Fish, don't hook up with Ben while I'm gone.
I'm a fish.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.